I think it's one of the biggest things that you can do to improve your business quickly and for a long time. It does make people accountable, but it's really more so to make sure that they have all the information they need, but you have to commit to it. Some of them are very easy to do. The best time to start is now.
In this video, I'm chatting with Kevin about SOPs or standard operating procedures, kind of the number one thing that you can implement in your business right now and see a pretty instantaneous benefit from. We're going to chat with Kevin about why they're so important and how they've helped Muskoka Landscapers grow from about 5 million to 10 million a year or more. So excited to chat with Kevin about this and get into this. Let's go. How you doing?
Yeah, let's do it. I'm good. Excited.
Okay. SOPs, baby.
Mm.
What is it about SOPs that really grabbed you? When did you first hear about SOPs? And maybe just give me some history about why it matters so much to you.
I think I heard about them a long time ago, more than 10 years ago. Never really seen the value in them. And at the time, we were a relatively small company. And now when I look back, being a larger company, I know how valuable they would have been as a small company.
Right.
But yeah, I think we've implemented them very methodically over the past 5 years, 6 years. Every year we're honing them. We revisit them 3 to 5 times a year, always making slight adjustments. If there's a new team member that gets added, there's often a little adjustment that needs to be made with them as well. So yeah, I'd say we're 5 or 6 years heavy, but I'm a big believer. If nothing else, I think it's one of the biggest things that you can do to improve your business quickly and for a long time. It's that important.
Your business has grown over the past 5, 6 years. What's changed in your SOPs in that time?
I think there's obviously different people in different positions now, which changes who's responsible to who inside the SOPs. But I think we just have more of them as well. You know, it started out as like a workflow SOP, which we still have. It's a very long one. But then we've been diving.
Workflow being like project-based?
Like initial call to warranty.
Okay.
Right. And everything that happens, all the nuances in between then and the end, and who's responsible for them, who they're responsible to, what are the timelines for each item, and then customer communications in there, all that type of stuff. So it's a very detailed SOP. Took a long time to build and a lot of reiterations in the first year or two to get it right. But we've honestly been using the same one for quite some time now. So again, some of the names change. But for the most part, we've been running with the same one for 5, 6 years now.
Okay, and let's dive into the what makes SOPs so impactful. Is it just understanding who does what step and then moves on to the next person, or is there more to it than that for you?
Well, I think it's very valuable for new hires. It gives them a real blueprint of what their responsibilities are, who they're responsible to, how much time do they have to be responsible. And it also answers a lot of questions when people run into snags in their workflow or their work process. If they refer to their SOP, they can usually figure out quite quickly what they should do or shouldn't do, or who they should reach out to.
Right.
So I think it just gives everybody a lot of direction. It gives all the different facets from accounting to ops to field staff to site supers to subtrades to estimating, how the yard operates, how vehicles are looked after, how equipment's maintained. Yeah, we have SOPs for everything.
When I think of SOPs, correct me if I'm wrong, but I think of kind of like a connect the dots. It's like this is 1, this is 2, this is 3, this is 4. Is it that, or is it more of like Lego instructions, you know?
It's pretty simplified, and like I think the more you dive into them, obviously the more work it is. But there's so many little steps, you know, and like the one that comes to mind is like our job startup. So when there's a new project and a project manager is handing it over to a site super, there's all the little details that you kind of take for granted sometimes. Like you need this many feet of silt fence. The nearest hospital is here. The subtrades and all their phone numbers are this. Your locates are in this file. Like everything's in Google Drive at this point.
Right.
But it really just gives you a real good checklist of, yep, got that. Oh, still need to do that. So it's like a really clean handoff from PM to site super. Like there's no reason that site super can now go, well, I didn't know that, or I didn't have that information. And not that's what we're using it for. It's, you know, it does make people accountable, but It's really more so to make sure that they have all the information they need when they need it before they've started the job. They've had some time to digest. And I think that in a nutshell is what SOPs are really designed for. But the more detail you put in, the more benefit they have.
Okay, so let's say I'm kicking off a job. You've got an SOP for me that I'm following. And the whole idea is that if nothing else, I do these things and I do my job right. Right?
Basically, yeah.
So it's kind of one of those things where anybody can implement these things, get SOPs into your business, get structure, framework into your business, and all of a sudden you're maybe guaranteeing the success of the project that you're working on.
Well, you're certainly guaranteeing the strategy of your team, who they're communicating with, and how and when. It gives them a really good template of how their workflow should go. Yeah, there's always things that get adjusted based on site conditions or weather, but
Sure.
for the most part, they're going to be following that system all the way through. And I've also seen this work really well in maintenance companies, like maintenance companies that have an SOP for each project or each property are really, really dialed because it gives the team a checklist on, okay, here's all the things we got to do on this property, because sometimes it might not be the same team. Here's everything we're going to do on this property. You're doing this, you're doing that. And when we're all done, yep, did that, yep. Or, hey, there was a problem with this. That goes to, the area manager or the project manager, and they communicate with the customer. We didn't trim this because there's a bee's nest, or whatever that communication is. But it just provides a real cookie cutter way.
That's a well-oiled machine.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. Nobody's wondering what they're supposed to do when they get there. Is there any areas we don't touch? Is there anything we don't prune? Do we bag the lawn? Do we need to fertilize this week? All those types of things are going to be in that SOP and make it clear.
Yeah. Wow. Okay. So I think about starting a new business. This would be an incredible leg up right away, right? To start with stuff like this rather than stumbling through, to kind of have the templates built out. And that's something that we're focusing on. We're putting a lot of effort into it in the Wealthy Landscaper. And let's talk about implementing SOPs, not just the fact that you have them, but the fact that they're getting put into your business in a way that they are going to affect change in your business and drive more profitability, because you're doing work better, more efficiently, and everybody's happy. Everybody wins. Staff wins because they know what they're responsible for, who they're accountable to, and how they're going to track, right? In the business. If I do all of these things, I'm doing my job and I can see my growth path here, right? The accountability side of this. It can be tough to take a business with no structure and mold it into something where we're all moving in a single direction, right? How would you do it?
Honestly, it's probably one of the few things in business that you can do relatively quickly and have quick improvement results, benefits very quickly.
But you have to commit to it.
But you have to commit to it. And depending on the type of business you run or the size of your business, I think like a slow introduction or a slow rollout, you can't come at your team with 15 new SOPs that you're demanding they all follow. The other thing you want to do is you really want to involve them, right? Because sometimes when you're the person looking at the big picture, you forget some of the nuances that happen on site on a day-to-day basis, or some of the smaller intricacies that they may need, or that you want to at least have in it. Like I think about our estimating template. There's a lot of things in that estimating template that we don't use on every job, but it's more just a check to go, do I need a crane on that job? Oh, no, I don't need a crane. You know what I mean? Like there are things that come up infrequently, but they're still important to be on your SOP.
For sure. One thing that it brings to my mind is, so I've got a small team, 7 people, and we started implementing SOPs maybe a year and a half ago or so. One of the things that I found most challenging was that in order to make one SOP happen later down the line, you have to hit the first one at the beginning. And so it really is like a rollout effect, and you can keep building on them and keep reviewing and refining them. But you need to start with the basics, time tracking, maybe, and nail that down before you can sort of leapfrog the next one. So when I think about the wealthy landscaper, we're talking about implementing SOPs with people and helping them be accountable to putting them in their business the right way. Thinking about how we're rolling that out with people, you know?
Well, and I think our SOP program that we're going to have, doing it over that 4-month stretch, I think is like the right amount of time, because you can implement a lot of SOPs in that time frame and also come up with a really good structure on how you're doing it, where the checkpoints are, how frequently are you reviewing them, and we can really help, expedite that process. I believe that the overall company workflow is probably the one to start with, because that's going to be the one that tells you everything that happens from a call or an email for a new job to the end until your warranty completion. And if you can start with that, it's going to be a very long list, and again, very detailed. We'll be able to share a lot of these SOPs and the ones that we use with that program. But I think if you start there, that really gives you an overall of, what you need to break down. And then you can start pulling sections out of it for estimating and safety and how that affects the yard, how your operations uses it. So I think that's where you got to start with it. You got to, and it's probably the one that's the most work. Some of them are very easy to do. Like when you start looking at site supers, the SOP for site supers have a ton of responsibility, a ton of items that they have to deal with, but they're really only responsible to a few people. So their list is relatively short. The rest of their work is really the work,
Right.
and organizing the work and making sure it's being done properly. So their SOPs are a little easier to build, little different from estimating or accounting.
It's a little bit more creative.
Yeah, it's a little more creative. Yeah. There's less people to be responsible to or accountable to. And then your team SOPs are the same. Their list is a little bit shorter, but still very important in the overall scheme of the end to start or start to end workflow.
I just think it's kind of a funny thing because, like you said, it can be one of the quickest things. SOPs can be one of the quickest things to implement in your business and see a drastic change. Mm-hmm. But you do have to implement them correctly. In this way, maybe it's less of a connect the dots. Maybe it's more of a paint by numbers.
Right.
Right. Because it's like you can have the sheet with all the numbers on it, but if you don't have the legend that tells you what color is what number, it's not going to look how it's supposed to look in the end.
Right.
And so I think about that with SOPs. If we're just dropping out these documents, it would be very difficult for them to work the way that they're working for Muskoka Landscapers. Mm-hmm. But the idea of implementing them with the 4-month rollout is something that I think is a really good idea. I think it's really exciting too for those people to make sure that over those 4 months, we're going to be working hard with them to make sure that those SOPs are working right for them. Mm-hmm. Yeah, it's something that I'm excited about. Also excited, like you said, just to get feedback from people as we're implementing them. How are they working for you? Oh, great. Are you going to tweak it? Do you want to review this?
Yeah. What are you struggling with?
Totally.
How's the team accepting it?
Yeah.
Back to your earlier point about the size, I think the sooner you start with the SOPs and they just become common in your business, the better. And I think even if you're a small business of 4 or 5 or 3, you're still going to have the same size workflow. You're just going to have less people involved.
Right.
But it's nice as you hire people, you can scratch off a few people's names and add that new person's name. So I think the sooner you start with them and they just become kind of part of your culture and part of your training program, especially through orientation for new hires and even for subtrades. Like we have a great one for subtrades as well.
How you bring them on, introduce them
to
the
exactly. How the quoting system goes, when the deposits, expected pay period, all that sort of stuff. There's never a bad time to start SOPs, but the best time to start is when you've started your business. Or I should say the best time to start is now.
I think the one hurdle that I ran into the most when I thought about creating processes for my business was we do so many things that are so different. Mm-hmm. How is a single process going to work? And then I would just put it off because of that, right? Because it's like, well, this time we're designing a poster. This time we're designing digital ads. And this time it's an email. And I'm like, those require all different systems. They require different pieces of software, et cetera, different techniques too. Mm-hmm. And so the thing that I kept running into was, it doesn't make any sense. You know what? Let's just freewheel it. Let's have a meeting. And we'll kick it off, and we'll all come up with ideas and throw a bunch of shit at the wall.
Right.
And then see what sticks, and then we'll go and run that way. I realized that was totally wrong. Having a process in place that outlines maybe the meetings that you need to have, the things that you need to have coming out of the meetings, the deliverables that you need to have from the actual designer themselves going into the implementation, how they get implemented in the certain systems. It's almost irrelevant of the actual work that you're doing, and it's more about just the process in itself and having something that everyone can point to and go, okay, is that thing done? Did we get there? Okay, now we can go to this next point.
Right. And I think that's the gist of a lot of the things we're doing, right? It's just these systematic approaches to improvement, metrics, KPIs, things to track against, goals each month to work towards. And I think we'll be doing a lot of that, not only with the accelerator program, but also with the SOP program. And again, the SOPs, that's a key system that is very easy to produce as long as you've got a trackable system on how you're introducing it. And if you can get your team involved with building them, utilize their strengths and their comments, it'll be much easier to implement. And I also feel like you want to do it over a 3 or 4 month period at a minimum to really get it dialed in and be able to reflect and have your weekly meetings and review them. And when problems arise in that 4 month period, refer to them. Right. See where the ball was dropped. We still, we get the odd time too, where we'll have something will happen through the process that gets missed. But at least we can then have a meeting and go back to it and say, okay, well, this is where we had the mistake, or this is where the communication got dropped. How do we fix that?
Yeah.
Like, how could we have a backup to that? And sometimes it's not a backup, but sometimes it's just an adjustment in who shares the information or how they share it. So yeah, again, key things, but easy to implement when you have a strategy.
So, I mean, that's a quick overview of the SOPs, why they're so important, and how they've worked so well for your business. I'm excited to see them roll out into other people's businesses and chat with people more about it. And I expect that we'll probably have a lot more conversations like this about them.
Yeah, I agree. And I think there'll be a lot of interesting things that come up from those conversations with people that are in the program.
Awesome. Well, thank you.
Thank you.